Welcome back, everyone, to Unclassified number 18. I'm joined with my host, Preston Stewart, straight out of Paris. And we have lots to talk about today, but most importantly, the F-47 was announced just now. And it is America's new sixth-generation fighter jet. It was announced by Trump with Pete Hegseth in the Oval Office. The contract was awarded to Boeing, and I'm going to let Preston chime in here shortly, but to give you the specifics, it flies with drones.
Let's get the Pacific. Let's get the Pacific.
Yeah.
Is that what you're about to say?
In the Pacific. Yes. And it flies with drones, and Trump says that its speed is top and maybe over 2. And he also won't tell us what the price is because he says it's sensitive. I'm sure we'll learn what the price is here in a few days. But Preston, thoughts on the new F-47 that will be replacing the F-22?
I'm not a big air power guy. Now, I know there's going to be circles that are going to eat this stuff up for a long time to come, but honestly, I don't think there was much here to take away. This is a program, so the sixth-generation fighter program, the next generation air dominance program. So, like, Boeing won it. That was kind of the announcement today, was that Boeing won that program. It's been going on. We have a couple different options here. Some say 2014, others say 2011. Nonetheless, this is not like last week there was a directive to come up with this. So this is something that's been a long time coming. Trump mentioned that it was canceled at one point, and I didn't know that. But also I'm not, again, super dialed in with the air power stuff.
Yeah.
It's controversial.
Canceled.
This high-end level of aircraft is controversial because we know the cost of the F-35 program has been substantial. That's where a lot of the controversy comes in, is just how expensive these things are to operate. But they are effective when they're up in the sky. Now, a couple nitpicky things here. We don't know any of the capabilities. It's just part of it. We don't really know what it looks like at this point. There's some speculation. We got kind of a picture a little bit today. But it's essentially saying that we are going to continue moving with our next generation of aircraft, and even the actual project itself says probably first planes in the 2030s. So this is not rolling off the production line next year. There's a long ways still to go. So again, I think some in the air power community are going to dig into this and will be able to parse it out. But big picture, nothing really changed with this announcement other than if you work for Boeing or if you own Boeing stock.
Yes. I was surprised to see that Boeing got it after they've had a really rough year and a half, right? They got those astronauts stranded in space. Windows were flying off of planes falling out of the sky. They had a really rough year and a half there, so maybe this is their comeback story.
They needed the win, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe this is their comeback story, or maybe it's not.
Oh,
but poor Lockheed
on that
cut
note,
out of it. Yeah.
On that note, I saw, take this with a big grain of salt, but I saw a $20 billion price tag associated with this project. That seems very low.
Like per plane?
That's what I'm saying, is I don't know what that $20 billion is for. In a little reading here talking about the history of this project, it said the project is estimated to cost $20 billion. But maybe it's getting to the first working prototype, because we're certainly not outfitting our military with these for $20 billion. But either way, it's going to be really expensive. That's defense in general, especially when you're talking about high-end stealth stuff. There's going to be a price tag to it.
Yeah, $20 billion seems really high. Well, maybe not. I mean, how much is the F-35?
To get to one?
Yeah.
F-35 is all jacked because it's distributed so much.
Right, but how much was the initial R&D? It wasn't. Maybe it was in the 50 billion mark. So maybe this is cheaper than that. I don't know. But that's usually not how tech works nowadays. Usually it gets more expensive.
Projected cost for sustaining are north of $2 trillion for the F-35.
Oh, wow.
Over its lifetime. Development and procurement was $442 billion. Pull that $20 billion out of here. I don't know where that could. The R&D for the F-35 was $400 billion.
Yeah.
20 seems like a made up number now.
it is a good sign that they are exporting the F-47, as he said. But what did he say? He said he like made the pitch like the weirdest thing on the planet. He said we're gonna make them 10% less powerful in case our allies are no longer our allies. And I was like, man, you are such a great salesman. That is so good. But they are exporting them, which is good because it allows an economy of scale, which is why the F-35 is so numerous. It was because we sell them to NATO and our allies, and NATO helped develop them. The F-22, I don't know if you know this, but there were 700 of them that were purchased. Only 130 were ever delivered, mainly because the planes were like $600 million each, and that's a lot of money compared to an F-35, which is around $70 million. I mean, so
these numbers
good
are just
sign here.
These numbers are so crazy at baseline, man. Yeah.
Yeah, so this
But
will be
talking
replacing
35,
the F-22. Yeah, speaking of F-35.
There's been a little F-35 drama. Yeah.
Oh, baby mama drama, dude. Okay, so, as you know, anyone who's been following this podcast for the past, 6-7 weeks, we will be getting a meter, as has been requested by the audience, right here behind me. It's so over,
back?
and we're so back. But as you know, there's been a lot of talk about there being a kill switch in the F-35, or the United States turning off U.S. military equipment and threatening other countries. Well, this has hurt Lockheed sales because now people are canceling. They're thinking about canceling. They're just not taking calls anymore. So Lockheed's on social media right now. They're begging. They're saying there's no kill switch. No kill switch exists. They're, responding to politicians. I mean, they are on their knees begging. And Denmark's politicians are just like, even if you're telling the truth and there is no kill switch inside the physical planes, the kill switch is still in the White House, and for that reason, we are out. And so Lockheed is now promising to Canada, supposedly, that they will bring jobs to Canada if they don't cancel their order of the F-35. And I have to tell you, growing up, I was told Lockheed Martin and Boeing and everyone else actively lobbied for us to invade Iraq and Afghanistan and these drone wars and everything. And either that was all a lie, or these companies have become pathetic. I thought America was controlled by war in the military-industrial complex. And now they're sitting here having to beg on social media for Portugal and Canada not to cancel their orders. I mean, what's going on here, Preston?
Yeah, the kill switch thing is interesting because the kill switch, the term makes it really simple to understand. Like you're driving in a car and the thing just shuts off. That's going to be a problem. I think that's oversimplifying it, but it makes it really easy to understand. The F-35 is so complex between the different systems, the software, the technology that's integrated, and all of the things that are only produced here in the United States or only produced by Lockheed, that there are a million ways to kill that thing without actually punching a switch. So if you think of, we'll see, maybe this ends up being a bad example, but if you've got an Apple device and Apple says, well, actually, Ben, we're not going to support you in any way, shape, or form going forward, eventually that device is not going to work anymore. You're not going to get any software updates that are only coming from Apple. You're not going to be able to ever get it repaired. You're not going to find it. You don't have access to any replacement parts. Like, you can use it for a while, but eventually it just becomes a paperweight. And that's kind of a good way to look at the F-35. If we just said, you know what, we don't have a kill switch, but we don't like Portugal, what you're doing right now, and we just cancel future maintenance contracts. They can't buy additional parts, spare parts. We don't push any software updates. The entire thing just becomes, a paperweight over time.
Without a doubt. And people have also pointed out that the F-35 is not solely made in America. We source parts from across the entire alliance, right? So, like, the British were very critical in developing the engines, the jet engines. So, I mean, the kill switch is multi-pronged, right? Like, the whole just supply thing can just shut down entirely. So, yeah, Lockheed is going through it right now. They're going through it, and best of luck to Boeing with selling these F-47s because
this is something that I've had a hard time coming to grips with in recent weeks. I think what really started this was the turning off of aid to Ukraine, when we were just like, oh, we're just going to do that now. And I think it kind of opened a lot of our allies' eyes. Like, oh my God, they'll actually do that in a war. This could be a problem. And of course, Ukraine, not in NATO, very different relationship we have with them than we do with previously Canada, the United Kingdom, or any others around the world. But I think that was an eye-opening moment for a lot of our closest friends or just associates that do purchase our military hardware, recognizing that is a possibility. And it's thrown me off because that is such a benefit to us. Our companies make so much money because countries around the world buy our military equipment. It provides us so much influence. Like here we are talking about what happens if we turn off the supply of replacement parts to a certain platform. It severely hampers a country's ability to defend itself. We have those leverage points because we've been such a good partner for so long in so many different ways that we've been able to get in there. And now we have all of these leverage points, and it feels like, and I'm sure they are constantly pushed and pulled in little directions, right? That's how we're able to affect influence around the world, one of the ways. And it feels like we just like pulled the rug out on that. We're like, you know what? Let's do some damage to the defense contractors, which nobody's going to shed a tear for these guys. I got it. But these are American companies owned by Americans, with Americans working on the assembly lines and in the factories. So, like, you know, either way, we're hurting those guys, but we're also hurting our ability to influence events abroad with our allies. Like, it's just across the board seemed like we tripped over that one a little bit.
Without a doubt. It seems like a forced error for no real reason. So, I mean, we'll have to grapple with the ramifications of that going forward. But speaking of the F-35, Preston, we have exported them to a lot of people, including Israel, who is now back to bombing Gaza, and it seems like the whole region is on fire. What is going on there?
Yeah, so they're probably not using the F-35s for Gaza. They're probably saving those for when they hit Iran in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
You think so?
Mark that one down on the It looks like Israel's coming to Israel's sending a delegation to the United States, I think, in 2 weeks. And publicly, they said, is to talk about Iran options. And, dude, a lot of our comments recently the United States comments are very hawkish towards Iran, like directly threatening. In fact, well, I'll get to it here, but we drew a red line. And that red line was immediately crossed, and we haven't yet responded to that. And the red line would likely involve us striking Iranian targets. So just know we'll all go through this together here on the Unclassified Pod. We'll go through the start of the 2025 Middle East war. Although, to be fair, there's been fighting going on nonstop for a while. All right, let's break it down. We'll start in Israel. Israel said ceasefire is off. They're not moving to a phase 2, which would have seen the complete removal of IDF forces from the Gaza Strip. Instead, they said, we're going back in. So in the past 48 hours, they've actually pushed ground forces into the Strip. We've got tanks rolling through central Gaza. We've got infantry in Rafah along the border with Egypt, and airstrikes pretty constantly. A lot of senior Hamas officials have been eliminated. I think the head of Hamas was just killed, the new one. I don't even recognize the guy's name because after Sinwar and Daif, there weren't that many people left. Put it that way. The bench was getting a little thin. Anyways, killed a bunch of those guys. The Gaza Ministry of Health has the death count in like the 400 to 600 range at this point. But yeah, full operations back on. It sounds like Israel is saying this time is different. We're going to go in and we're not going to stop until all the hostages are returned. So I don't think this is a limited action. I think it's the start of probably a more aggressive war than we saw the first time around. That's phase 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's. I don't know exactly what that means because we've seen pictures of Gaza. Right, there's not a lot left. In a lot of places, Israel has shut off any aid. My understanding is they've shut off aid flowing in, and they're just it's going to get. If you thought the first year of that war was bad, based off what Israel's saying right now, I think they're really going to get after it. So that's Israel. Israel also this week has shot down 4 Houthi missiles fired from Yemen.
Wow.
Because the Houthis are back on their thing. About a week and a half ago, the Houthis said, hey, Israel, you stop moving aid back into Gaza. Restart that right now. You have 48 hours or we're going to pick up attacks in the Red Sea. And Israel didn't do it. And they said, hey, 24 hours. And they didn't do it. And the Houthis said, hey, back on, game time, here we go. And they hadn't yet carried out an attack in the Red Sea or the Gulf of Aden since November. So there's been a little bit of a break there. but it looked like it could happen any day now. And then the U.S. started hitting Houthi targets. And we've done like 6, maybe 7 rounds of strikes against the Houthis now. And then they started doing their thing. And I don't want to make it sound like the United States instigated this with the Houthis, because they were like finger on the trigger, said we're getting ready to shoot. It had reached a boiling point. It looks like the U.S. just shot first, if you will. Don't know a lot about the battle damage that the U.S. Inflicted on the Houthis. Looks like we're going after more leadership figures at this point than just military infrastructure. So, like, not just missile launch and drone launch sites, but actually headquarters facilities. The Houthis have fired missiles and drones at our ships and at Israel. And President Trump came out and said, we all know what's going on here. Iran is behind this. So from now on, this was on the 17th, so 4 days ago, from now on, every shot fired by the Houthis we will view as a shot coming directly from Iran, and we'll react accordingly. So that's the red line. Ben, question.
Yes. Why are we bombing the Houthis? Is it due to international shipping?
That's the simple yes. Yes. The impact the Houthis are having. Well, you want the conspiratorial or the...
Well, so I'll ask one question,
rational.
then I want the conspiratorial. But,
Okay.
All right, we have the tariffs. We're trying to reduce international trade. So, in theory, the United States should withdraw from protecting shipping lanes, right? So why are... Not that well, so I support... I'm a big free trade guy. But, like, if we have the tariffs, why are we protecting... Like, if we're done with free trade, why are we protecting the shipping lanes? Do we have an explanation for that yet, or...
We're not done with free trade, right? Like, that's still April 2nd, Doomsday or Liberation Day is the day that...
yeah, whatever he said it is. Yeah, but I mean, we're if we have the tariffs, though.
Listen, you asked me a why question, and then you went down this rabbit hole of making it make sense. No. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make it make sense.
No, I was asking if there was a contradiction in the policy.
Maybe. I to be blunt, I haven't really thought much about that. But the reason that the United States is...
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you the logical one first, and the one I tend to fall in line with is shipping. So it's a major trade route flowing through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is right along the coast of Yemen, and the Houthis have figured out. I think it's a problem, big picture around the world going forward. They figured out for the cost of some pretty cheap drones, they can severely impact international trade. Now, their targeting has been all over the map. Like, they like to say we only target Israeli or American ships, and then they hit one out of Brazil with a Greek crew going to Iran. So, like, in turn, what's happened is shipping has dropped like 70% from its peak and hasn't come back up because you've got a lot of companies that are just saying, like, we're just not going to risk it. It's just not worth it. And the Houthis did that. Again, they only sunk a few ships, which I guess, only
a few, yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, for how long it's been going on, they've hit relatively few ships, all things considered. But it doesn't matter. These companies, understandably so, are like, screw it. We're just going to go the long way. So they're still shipping their goods. It's just costing more to do it. The conspiratorial take is because Israel told us to.
I see. Okay. That's global trade is in crisis because you can't go through the Red Sea, and the Panama Canal is drying up, right? And so there's such a long line there, you can't really use it. So everyone's around the Horn of Africa like it's 1780. This
is something that I got really frustrated with the first time around with the Houthis and all of this. And we're starting to get back there again, and there's not nearly enough attention on this. Those are our sons and daughters, those American citizens, sailors, airmen, Marines, on these ships that are shooting down Houthi missiles and drones every day. When the Houthis fire a drone, they're trying to kill. The goal is for that to strike an American vessel and kill our fellow citizens. Yeah. They are in harm's way. And I just feel like that's glossed over too much. It was glossed over when the Iranian militias were conducting attacks on our bases in Syria and Iraq, and it's glossed over because we shoot them down so much. But the reason that the Houthis aren't killing Americans isn't for lack of effort. And I think because we're so good at shooting these things down, we brush it aside. But one day, one of them is going to get through. It's just how this works. Like, nothing is entirely indefensible.
That does seem to
yeah.
be true. Do you think that in the fall there was a story that the Houthis had obtained anti-ship missiles from the Russians? Do you believe? I mean, I saw reports yesterday that they were using anti-ship missiles. I don't know. I assume that was not successful. Otherwise, we'd know about it. But do you think there's a real risk there?
Actually, you have to have it on the table, unfortunately. So the top backer of the Houthis is the Iranian government, and most of the Houthi weapons at this point are just direct replicas of Iranian weapons. Like the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, put together this infographic about a year ago saying, here are the Houthi weapons, and they did a side-by-side with Iranian weapons, and they are identical. Like a different paint job sometimes, and that's it. So a lot of the Houthi weapons are Iranian. It wouldn't be shocking if some Russian stuff made it to Iran and then eventually to the Houthis, maybe. I don't know that there's a lot of evidence of Russian munitions going directly to Yemen at this point. But the Iranians do have anti-ship missiles. Hezbollah had anti-ship missiles. So a lot of what they have now, everything that I've seen is those are Iranian. The Houthis say they're domestically manufactured, but like I don't know that there's a lot of evidence to support that. The problem is that Russia has in the past, not Putin, not Lavrov, but when you get down the chain a little bit, there's been the floating of they know the Houthis are a thorn in our side. We've actively got our service members engaged there. And honestly, the longer it goes on, the more it looks like we picked a fight we can't win. So there has been talk in some Russian circles about maybe we help the Houthis with targeting or intel. I think getting weapons to the Houthis would be a real challenge for them. But I wouldn't write that off entirely, depending how relations change over the coming years.
Well, how is Iran getting weapons to the Houthis?
Smuggling by boat.
That makes sense.
There's a lot of boats moving in for humanitarian reasons. So there's just more than are being checked. It's the reason that a few months ago Israel carried out a significant strike against the Hadida port, I believe it was. And the reason they said they carried out that strike is like, hey, this is where the Iranian weapons are coming in. And over the years, we've intercepted, the United States and other countries have intercepted a fair number of ships moving from Iran to Yemen with broken down components for rockets, missiles, drones, things like that.
Interesting. And so, to go back to Gaza, I have another question. I see these news reports about the U.S. talking to countries in Africa about getting them to accept Gazans. Is there a particular... Are they seeking to move everyone out of Gaza? Or just some? Or what is the point? What is trying to be achieved here?
Depends who you ask. So there are some in the Netanyahu government that would like to remove all Gazans.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an extreme view. I don't know that that's held by the majority of Israelis, not by a long shot, but there are some that would like that to happen. I know that Trump has kind of floated that before, talking about clearing it out to rebuild. So, they can't be here while the rebuilding's happening. It's too much. I have seen the reports recently about a variety of different countries getting proposed, essentially. Will you take these Palestinian refugees, or refugees that I guess they're refugees at that point? That is such a monumental effort that it's hard for me to look at that piece quite yet. Mm-hmm. Like, there's still a war going on in Gaza. And if we're talking about permanently displacing, say, 2 million people, that war is not going to stop anytime soon. So I almost think I'm almost like not focused on where are they going to go, because it seems like we're so far from there. Right. But I will say, yeah, there's a couple people that would like to see that happen. I think the majority in Israel, at risk of speaking out of turn here, just don't want Hamas there. They're good at peaceful coexistence. They don't necessarily want to take over Gaza. They just no more of these rockets coming out of the Strip. No more attacks coming out of Gaza.
I see. And then going upwards, Syria and Lebanon. It's getting a little funky there, a little weird. What's going on there?
Our boy Jelani, friend of the pod. Can we say that? Should we say that?
Yeah. Well, friend of the pod has always just been the worst of the worst, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah. Um, there was some violence in Syria this last week along the coast. Honestly, kind of a lot of mixed reports about kind of where it settled out. Is it looks like it was a group of former Assad loyalists that had kind of gathered in Latakia and Tartus area in the west and picked up arms and were trying to take back, get back their glory, right? Fight back for Assad, and started killing some Syrian soldiers, and that just blew up to where you had like affiliated groups rolling in, executing civilians. So it was a pretty nasty, probably like 3 or 4 day stretch there. That died down. And then looks like Hezbollah or a Hezbollah aligned group in Lebanon captured 3 Syrian soldiers and killed them. So then Syria was like, got it, guys, game on. They brought up the artillery. They started redeploying forces to the border with Lebanon and started carrying out pretty significant strikes. Rockets flying into Lebanon. The Lebanese military mobilized and moved forces into that area to try to slow it down, and it looks like right now the fighting has stopped. I wouldn't call that a war, I'd call it a skirmish, but it's just another test of this Syrian government right now.
do you think that Syrians were better off under Assad than the current regime? Or do you think the violence is temporary?
I think that's not that simple of a question. I think the vast majority of Syrians long term will be much better without Assad, but we don't know what the next thing is quite yet. I still have hope that this ends up being a big win for the Syrian people. There's going to be a small group, Alawite probably, that were the Assad loyalists, where the future is just not going to be as good because their guy is not in power. But Assad was so bad. I mean, it's kind of like looking at Saddam, right? We say, was life better? Yeah, was life better after Saddam? Like, I would say yes, probably for a lot of people. But then it also took a turn, and it might have, 06 to 14 might have been worse. It was really bad, I think it's that kind of situation.
Makes
what do you
sense.
think? What's your gut say on that? I feel like that's a tough one to answer.
I don't know. I don't have any strong opinions on Syria, really. I think it's hard to know, right? It's hard to know. If it ends up, I think in 5 years you could say more definitively whether or not it was better for them that Assad's gone or not.
All right, so we're past it. Let's play this game then. Is Iraq better post-Saddam?
Oh, well, okay. I think, all right, so
yeah.
I'm going to go yes. I think yes, it is. I think Iraq during Saddam. Okay. I retract my yes. All right, here's what I think my answer is. I think the world is better that Saddam's gone. He was a menace. He invaded Iran. He was firing missiles at Israel, firing chemical weapons at his own people. He was invading Kuwait. This man was having a Hitler run in the Middle East, without a doubt. And the world is better that he's gone. Are Iraqis better off now that he's gone? I don't know. Iran's certainly better off now that he's gone. But do I regret the U.S. overthrowing him? No. He got what he deserved. So, oh well. But I think it's hard to say. Maybe Iraqis are better off, and now that ISIS is gone. And what do you think? What is your verdict?
That's why I threw it on you, man. It's such a tricky question.
Yeah.
Saddam, bad dude, start to finish. Good that he's no longer around for a lot of people, but those were, to put it lightly, some fucking growing pains for the Iraqi people from probably 05, 06 until, gosh, honestly, probably closer to 19. Like a 15-year stretch of a lot of people dying. A lot of innocent people dying. Living in fear, straight up civil war, sectarian civil war for a stretch of that with just brutal violence. Like, it's hard to look at a lot of that and say, don't worry, that's better. That was some rough. Let's move on. All this hypothetical stuff.
Oh, wait. I have a fun fact about Iraq.
Yeah.
Before we go over.
Okay.
So did you know this? in Iraq, when all of a sudden suicide bombers had moved to Afghanistan to start doing that, the CIA and the military were like, why is this happening? Because this is not what the Taliban does, right? Afghans don't have a history of suicide bombing. And what they found is that the war in Iraq was destabilizing the war in Afghanistan. Isn't that interesting?
I believe that. Yeah.
The more you know.
That is
But
interesting. I feel like people don't normally know that the suicide bombing was much more prevalent in Iraq for longer and more intense. It did eventually come to Afghanistan, but even when I was there, it was mostly foreigners. There's something we had to keep an eye out for was foreign fighters were the ones that would be brought in to blow themselves up, not the locals.
Yeah, definitely not an Afghan Taliban thing. They were not interested.
Eventually they got there, yeah.
Yeah, but just kind of the, one of those details that will be lost to history, but truly one of the stranger ones. But Ukraine, we had a ceasefire, kinda, maybe, not really. What happened here? Yeah.
Yeah, so let's see. About a week ago, it was last weekend, the U.S. had a delegation, met with Zelensky down in Saudi Arabia, and Zelensky came out and said, hey, listen, I'm good for a ceasefire. Let's just stop fighting. 30 days, see where this takes us. It was, bias aside, I think that was probably like the biggest step towards peace we've seen since the opening days of the war. Like, no terms, just stop shooting, stop fighting, stop killing each other. Putin kind of sat on it and kicked it around a little bit. The U.S., in turn, turned back on aid, turned back on intelligence sharing. Russia just kind of waffled and said, like, I don't know, there's some things, listen, there's some stuff in here we got to work through. So technically no ceasefire was in place. Then Trump had a call with Putin where they apparently had two different conversations because the readouts from those calls were conflicting in a lot of ways.
I thought the same thing when I was reading them. I was like,
Yeah, it's two different talks.
Yeah.
But as a part of that, the U.S. included, an energy and infrastructure ceasefire would be good. So you can see they're kind of narrowing it in a little bit from a just all-in ceasefire. Immediately after that, Putin was slinging drones into Ukraine. Like, within minutes of the meeting ending, Ukraine certainly hadn't had time to even hear the terms of this proposed ceasefire, let alone agree. And so then Ukraine immediately launched attacks back at Russia, and Russia said, hey, Ukraine, you're violating the ceasefire, guys. What's up? Just like comical. But either way, that's about where it sits right now. It sounds like Ukraine hasn't. They're supposed to talk about the ceasefire this weekend, and I think it's worth stressing that there has not been a ceasefire in place yet at all. Mm-hmm. It's like if you're in a fight and you say ceasefire, you can't hit me anymore. It doesn't work. Like, both people have to agree to it, and at no point in here have both parties agreed to the ceasefire. So, as tempting as it is to say, like, Russia violated the ceasefire, and as tempting it is, or obviously Russia to say Ukraine violated the ceasefire, there was nothing to violate. I would say there were some bad faith actions there. But to be fair, Ukraine has been carrying out offensive operations this whole time as well. They just started a new little mini attack into Belgorod. They hit a Russian airbase yesterday. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're apparently just destroying Russian air defense assets all across Crimea. The rumble in Crimea is what they're calling it.
The rumble in Crimea. Yeah, I saw Putin was pressuring Trump to recognize the 4 territories he annexed, as well as Crimea. What is your sense there? Do you think they'll accept that? Do you think...
So that's going to be an interesting one because what if we do and Europe doesn't? Like, what is this? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
What if we do and the United Nations continues to not? Because remember, the only countries that have recognized, like, Crimea as Russian is, like, what, Belarus, North Korea? Is that it?
Yeah. I believe
there might be a couple.
Maybe like a few African states.
Right. So if we do, it's one of those, it goes back to when we change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. What does that mean? It's the same thing. Like, what happens if we recognize this? Maybe it opens the doors for us to remove sanctions
I think it gets very. I think that move is very messy. Maybe one of the messiest ones you can make. Because, right, it's not like just like, all right, you just arbitrarily named a body of water. He went above Europe or behind Europe's back, recognized the claim, right? I think, like, recognizing it without consulting Ukraine, without consulting Europe, I think it's like the point of no return. Like, if
I would be
you know, what do you think?
I would be so exhausted if I was Ukraine because like the back and forth, up, down, and sideways on this stuff, when it's like a conversation about your existence. Like when talking to some of the soldiers there, they'll reach out at times and ask questions of like, what, can you kind of like interpret this, if you will? And a couple times I've been like, guys, I don't know that I would pay attention to the news because you're going to hear like 17 different things. And all of it's crazy or good or bad or awful or like maybe you just shouldn't pay attention to it. And they're like, I some of them are like, I feel like I need to, but it's got to be just whiplash to try to keep up with this,
Yes, I have a wire notification that the U.S. Navy is denying reports that it's come under attack in the Red Sea this week. No missiles were launched at the strike group. It escorts international merchants or allied Navy forces.
I'm going to fact check this one real quick. Did they just say missiles?
Let's see. They deny reports that its forces have ever come under attack in the Red Sea this week. No missiles. No missiles. So maybe, but they said that they weren't attacked. So I feel like they would say that. But while you fact check that, I'll talk about Ukraine. Another key, part of being exhausted about being Ukraine is that, it's, they don't really get a voice at the table, it seems, in these peace negotiations. But also it seems like every time they get close to getting there, the rug gets pulled out from under them. And so that's got to be extremely frustrating, especially what they're trying to sign this minerals deal that the White House wanted. And they're like, all right, we'll sign it. But now they're saying, well, actually we want control of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. And it's just like what they want as part of the deal. For the life of me, I cannot figure out why. And Zelensky told Trump on the call, he said, the power plant is best if it's operated by Ukrainians, owned by Ukrainians. And he's like, no. The United States needs to run the power plant. And I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why he wants the power plant. Any idea?
Well, No, I have no idea. You want the fact check?
Yes.
On March 19th, so 2 days ago, U.S. Central Command posted footage saying U.S. fighter aircraft shot down Iranian-backed Houthi one-way attack drones. I published it on a couple different platforms, and it's videos of the interceptions of Houthi drones. So technically, that doesn't say
what do you think
it was fired at.
That's fair, yeah.
I don't know. Technically, this doesn't say like it was fired at a U.S. ship, but like I don't know what else these drones have been fired at.
I've been covering.
It's clearly over water. The video.
That's true. I have been covering the Houthis and the U.S. fight for about a year. How long has this been going on? Oh, over a year now. And
November of 23. Yeah.
Yeah. So over a year now, and the one thing I'll tell you is that it is the most schizophrenic conflict that has ever existed ever. The Houthis are constantly hitting U.S. ships and not hitting them, and the U.S. Navy is constantly under attack, but it's also not. It is extremely just like you never know what's going on, and it's bizarre. Yeah.
There was a shocking amount of video game footage being used with the Houthis.
Yes.
About 6 months ago. You remember that? Yeah.
Yep. It is. And then there are like reports of like, oh, well, they hit an aircraft carrier. And then it's like, well, no, they didn't. And then 3 months later, you find out, oh, well, they missed it by 300 meters. It's just like, you know.
Well, the one this week.
Yeah.
The one this week, the DOD said they missed by 100 miles. It's like, do you know what it means to miss by 100 miles?
Yeah, at that point,
might be longer than the range.
Yeah.
Is that the wrong direction?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if they're firing at you if they miss by 100 miles.
You
That's
wouldn't know. Yeah,
crazy.
he'd be like, I don't know, is that
Yeah,
even meant for me?
that is a good point. Okay, Ukraine though. So they want the power plant. I don't know why, but the president has now talked about the power plant several times and has asked Ukraine about it several times now in the past few days. I usually have a good pulse on where he's getting thoughts from. I have no idea where the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant new obsession comes from. Maybe the same place where the McKinley one comes from. I have no idea. It's so bizarre to me. Um, and he also told Putin that he wants control of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, and Putin disagreed. So I I don't know, but it's like it's kind of, you know what I think it is. Have you seen the Oval Office lately?
Yeah, there was like I thought they were going to talk about, we were watching that before they started. The FIFA thing is in there.
Yeah, so he's just accumulating random items,
Yeah.
and so he's got the Gulf of America poster to his left, right, and then he's got the FIFA World Cup there. He's also has the Declaration of Independence on the wall now, right? So he's just accumulating items like a hoarder. And so my thought is maybe that is what U.S. foreign policy is now too. All right, we're gonna get the nuclear power plant. We're gonna have these minerals. We're gonna have Gaza. We're gonna have all
Just pick
kinds of
stuff
just
up.
random, just pick stuff up. So I don't. If you don't have any insight, I'm
Greenland,
certainly
you got to
lost.
add Greenland to that. Yeah.
Greenland,
You got
Canada,
Greenland as well.
Mexico, whatever. But so yeah, no insight then on to why we want the
No,
nuclear
I
power
I
plant.
don't know. It's again, it's this constant. I don't know if moving the goalpost is the right terminology, but like it's constantly changing, right? It's the
They're
minerals deal.
Charlie
I heard the
Browning
mineral
it.
deal is
Yeah.
back on the table now. Yeah, like it now it's back on, but then it wasn't, and now it's a nuclear power plant. And by the way, Russia is starting a small scale offensive. We'll see how this plays out in Zaporizhia. So some of the most intense fighting right now
Is
along
that
the
how you
front.
say it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, do you think they're going to be successful in this operation?
It's too early. It's like the initial reports coming out of very pro-Russian accounts talking about kind of an increase in strikes. So we don't even know what they're committing to that front right now. Just that they have chosen it as a place to strike a little harder in recent days.
Do you remember early on in the war when I don't want to say the two of them, but they would accuse each other, and it was always Russia, where they would hit the nuclear power plant, and then the IAEA would freak out, and they'd send inspectors, and they'd say it's fine. But it was like every other day these guys were hitting this power
It's
plant.
fine.
Has that
Don't do this
stopped?
again, guys.
Yeah, has that stopped?
think so.
And people have just stopped caring, or
I think it's that people have stopped caring. I know who to look up for this.
because at a certain point, I mean, you think this thing would be crumbling down if it's been getting hit drones and missiles and for God knows how long now.
Malcontent News does a good job covering this.
It is, for those who don't know, it is the largest nuclear power plant in all of Europe, maybe even the world, but I know for sure Europe. And that's saying a lot because France has a lot of nuclear power. Germany used to; they shut it down, but now MERS is saying, well, maybe we turn it back on so we're not dependent on Russian oil. Well, I guess the issue is not Russian oil anymore; it's American natural gas that they're a bit worried about now because the U.S. has been making a killing on, ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, people stopped buying it. Well, at least they've tried to, and the U.S. has just been selling natural gas at a premium. No, no discounts for friends, family or friends, and it is a booming business to be in. You have an answer?
I got
Chris?
nothing. I got nothing.
Nothing, okay.
Taking too long to digging
All right.
through, but I want to talk because you were hitting me up with this yesterday, and I didn't know what was going on. Are we getting banned? Or we're not getting banned from traveling to other countries, but other countries are warning people about coming to the
Yeah.
United States?
Yes. All right. So before we lead into this, it's important to mention that as we're recording, President Trump has said that we will join the British Commonwealth, and that will tie into our travel ban here. But King Charles is
Wait.
we're going.
No. Hold on. Did you say we're joining the British Commonwealth?
Yes. So
What does that
King
mean?
Charles Well, I'm glad you asked. So the Commonwealth is a free association of states that were formerly colonized by the Second British Empire, which, important to note, America was part of the First British Empire, right? Before they took over the whole world. We were only part of the first one. The second one is when they take over everything else. I think, personally, that is a revisionist history, because I think it's just one empire and they lost the United States and then they continued onward. It's not like it collapsed. But anyways, they're all together, and the king doesn't become your head of state, but like it brings you back into the royal fold, and they're like the Commonwealth Games, and there's like free trade between members, but it's not like necessarily enforceable. And they
And you can just say like, we'd like to. I want to be part of that.
Yeah, well, so they're inviting Trump. That the king is saying it's a secret offer, but not that secret because the British papers figured out what it was, and that they're inviting the United States to the Commonwealth, to the British Commonwealth, to join. And Trump tweeted out on Truth Social, "I love King Charles. Sounds good to me," which in the article he tweeted out does have the offer for the Commonwealth, so that must be what. So
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Bizarre. Yeah, very bizarre. There's always a good chance maybe he didn't read the article, but so we will be joining the British Commonwealth. Next year is our 250th anniversary of independence, so we will see if this actually happens. But speaking of Commonwealth and Association of States, yeah, so we have a travel advisory placed on us by the United Kingdom and Germany saying, look, you can go to the United States, but their detention's arbitrary, basically. They kind of give the warning that you get in like going to like a third world nation where it's like you might need to bribe a border guard, right? They're saying just because you have a visa, a green card, does not mean that you will be admitted. And so on top of that, Canada also gave a do not travel warning. First, we saw just a few like equivalent of their like House members, their members of Parliament, to saying don't go, and now we've seen Quebec and another province issue that as well. So not great, but why is this happening? So at first, a French scientist was kicked out because he had sent private text messages to a friend that were critical of the president, and Border Patrol said that they were borderline conspiratorial and hateful, and then they tried to charge him with terrorism, but then they dropped the charges and deported him. Now, Customs, to their credit, has denied this report. The French government still says this is true, but Customs has denied it and says that he actually had stolen classified material from Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is where we develop nuclear weapons. I don't know if I buy that story, because why wouldn't you just charge him then? Because he stole state secrets from the United States instead of deporting him to France or attempting to charge him with terrorism. Just kind of a bizarre story, but France is still sticking to it, and as a result, France denounced the United States for its infringement on freedom of expression and speech. And then Canada's do not travel warning comes after a Canadian traveler, I mean, she's not alone, there have been several, she filled out her work permit paperwork wrong, so they threw her into an ICE prison for 2 weeks, and she was unable to get out, even when Canadian diplomatic staff intervened and media intervened. They would not let her out, and eventually she gets out once the media really starts reporting on it. And she came out with these letters from all the other women in the prison that she says have been there for weeks and months, haven't been able to get due process or contact anyone. So she's mailing them out to her families. I mean, God bless her. And yeah, she's like, my only crime, I filled this out wrong. I asked for help, and I got thrown into a prison. Absolutely bonkers. The British warning comes from this woman who was going on the trip of a lifetime, as she called it, across North America. She was here legally in the United States, and Canada is also part of North America. People forget that, but it's part of North America. So she crosses the border to go on the Canadian part of her trip, and they say, well, you have the wrong visa, so you need to go back to the United States, where she has a legal visa entry, but she goes back to the U.S. border that she had just crossed minutes earlier, and they mark her as an illegal alien and throw her in detention for 10 days. And it was not until British diplomatic staff intervened to get her out. The German travel advisory comes because at Logan International, they took a German green card owner who's lived here permanently since 2007 in New Hampshire, and they stripped him naked, violently interrogated him, and put him in a cold shower, and he was admitted to the hospital as a result of his injuries. And another German they arrested for 6 weeks and put into solitary confinement for 8 days. So our allies are not happy, and they're saying, do not come here. Do not go to the United States until they figure out what is going on here. And I think American citizens are rightfully asking, what is going on here? What is this? What is this policy here? And then there are also reports of ICE trying to harass elderly Indian people into giving up their green card. It's getting really nasty, and it seems, as people have pointed out, that it seems like maybe ICE has a quota or something on deportations. It just doesn't make any sense why we're harassing permanent residents, people who are here legally, right? This was pitched to everyone as a deportation of people who are here illegally. And whether you agree or disagree with that merit, this is definitely not the original thing that everyone was told they'd be getting.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I mean, if all of that is accurate, I would probably tell my citizens not to travel here too.
Yeah.
Or at least be wary of what could happen. I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, but like usually the stories we hear about, it's almost like racial profiling is a way to put it, right? In a sense,
yeah.
It's usually people of color, minorities. Mm-hmm. This is interesting because at least everything you read off, these are all Western countries. I don't know the ethnicity of everybody involved here.
They're all white.
That feels very weird. Not that it's happening, but my gut would say that is probably happening more just based off how we historically have done this. Is probably happening more than to non-white foreigners would be my guess.
Oh,
you think that's fair?
If this is happening to Canadians and British people, this is without a doubt happening. To white Canadian British people, this is without a doubt happening to people who are non-white and non-Western, much more.
What I'm getting at there is if you're at customs or you're at an airport and you're trying to determine should this person be in the United States or not, one easy indicator is whether or not they're speaking English fluently and with an American accent. And we have a ton of green card holders and citizens that do not speak English, or English is their second language. So to me, hearing one of those languages, hearing any other language, I think would tip somebody off to like, wait a minute, let me look into this further than an English-speaking Canadian. You know what I mean? Like,
without a doubt. It's bizarre, but even like the other language thing, it's like we all have lived in the same country for, however many years. Like, everyone knows people here have different accents and everything, right? So I don't know. ICE's conduct's bizarre.
I'm just saying, like, if you walk into a room and you're told like you've got to find the people that quote shouldn't be here, and one group isn't speaking English, like you're probably going to start there, or like that would be the natural reaction. Is like, okay, that maybe a higher probability.
Yeah, no one is immune to this harassment, it seems. Here in Chicago, we just had a story of a guy. We have two stories of a guy who is a U.S. citizen, and he was carrying his driver's license and his social security number on him at the time. For whatever reason, he was speaking Spanish, didn't speak English. Not for whatever reason. Obviously, he doesn't know English, but he was speaking Spanish, and he was arrested, thrown into the back of a van, and held in detention for over a day until they let him out. And I was like, he has his driver's license and social security number. You took it into custody. And no apologies or anything. And apparently ICE is all over Little Village here, which is our Hispanic neighborhood in Chicago, just being like the Gestapo, harassing everyone, or maybe the Stasi, just being really just issues. And then the other one is, and this is the one that I thought, okay, well, maybe public opinion is shifting on this, because I heard this from my grandfather. He watches the nightly news. Do you watch the nightly news? I think that's a sign you're getting old. If you watch your local nightly news, it means you're old. But he says that there was a guy here who owned a landscaping company, had 3 kids, a wife, been here for 30 years. He was teaching Little League here illegally. ICE comes up to his house in the morning, deports him, gone. And I just thought, who is that? Who is that serving? Right? Okay, I mean, I know the argument is, well, if you're here illegally, you committed a crime. It just seems to me, instead of knocking on his house to deport him, why don't you knock him on his house and give him citizenship? right? I mean, who does that serve? It certainly doesn't serve the United States to kick someone out like that. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of where this stuff is going. That's for sure.
I don't know. I mean, I'll disagree with you there. I think anybody who's here illegally is in the crosshairs for any sort of deportation. We can get into the nuance of what that illegal status means. Does it mean that they like filled out their paperwork incorrectly, right? Like it was an honest mistake, or is it that they are intentionally avoiding customs and immigration? Like, but I've not liked how a lot of this has played out, but the personal stance here is if somebody's here illegally, then it's not out of the realm of possibility that they get picked up and moved out. I'd like to see more evidence with that to make sure we're doing this the right way and that people aren't getting caught up in this incorrectly. But I also have a gut feeling that we're going to see a lot of this in the next few weeks, months, and years. And there's almost a sense of keep your powder dry, if that makes sense. So,
well, speaking of evidence and deporting people, Trump enacted a wartime power, the Alien Enemies Act, and sent 123 or 120, do you have the exact number, of what he claims are Venezuelan gang members to El Salvador. So they did not have due process. They did not go through an immigration court, sent to a foreign prison in El Salvador without any trial. And those names still have not been released. I know that CBS has a list, and they aired them last night. I have not gotten a chance to look at them, but the White House is still refusing to give out a list of these people's names. They claim they're part of this international criminal group called Trenta de Agua. Is that what it is? Trenta de Agua? No, that's...
I think so, yeah.
Isn't that three water? Water three? I don't know. But, so they're putting them out there, and they're in a huge showdown with a judge over this, and they feel they don't have to explain it, but the United States is not at war with Venezuela. So, but one of the stories that came out of this was that they deported a man who was a soccer coach here, who had a Real Madrid tattoo that they mistaken for a Trenta de Agua tattoo. Now, Border Patrol says that that report is false and that they have good intelligence that he is part of this terror group, but they haven't given any evidence. And a lot of these things would go away if they just had due process, and it's not exactly clear why they needed to be sent without due process. Do you have any thoughts on this?
That's where I kind of
condemnation from the EU.
That's where I kind of draw the line is just do the quick process for it. Like,
yeah.
If you've got them in custody, run this thing through quickly. Just show that they were. I feel like it changes a lot of the arguments if you can quickly show, like, here's Preston Stewart. He's a member of this gang. He's been convicted of this crime, and he is here illegally. Like,
yeah,
okay. And then we can have a conversation about what comes next. Like, I'm a little confused as to why we don't just send them back to Venezuela. I imagine Venezuela doesn't want them and like won't receive them or something. But I feel like that part of the conversation could be had in good faith as soon as we get through this first part of like, yeah, here's the 27, 128, 340, whatever it is. They've been through the system or enough of the system to identify that they are criminal offenders. And then you take it from there. Like the concern I have is without that, like just show the evidence that they're illegally in the United States. That'd be a big, and maybe that's what they put out, to be fair. This is not something I've dug deep into. You said something just came out. Maybe that information is out there. In retrospect, I would have liked to see that before. It would have avoided a lot of headaches, a lot of arguments, and a lot of concern. Because it's entirely possible that list comes out, and it's perfect, right? These are all really bad dudes. That could be a scenario. At which point all of this arguing is a little bit misguided, I would say. But we don't know that because that list isn't out yet. So, maybe lesson learned here for the administration. Just change up that order a little bit.
Maybe. I don't know. It seems like they're I don't think a lesson was learned because they're now Elon Musk is donating to members of Congress who promised to impeach the judge who ruled against Trump's. Yeah, so I don't think they learned. But let's get into here. We have some questions from the viewers.
Yeah,
and
run through these.
So we put this out on the YouTube in a community post. We got 22 questions, but I've limited them down to 4. And so we thank you for your questions. I did read all of them. And next week, we'll ask again, and we'll get right into that. And if your question wasn't picked, I mean, it's not personal. Just, whatever.
Might be.
I mean, maybe a little bit. No. But, all right, Preston. They want to know what our favorite foods are. So.
Crawfish or crabs. Don't get it very often.
That's...
Love it. Yeah, crawfish. Good spicy crawfish.
No, so I
what
know
is
it's like
crawfish?
The bug, right? Yeah, like do you suck it?
Mud bugs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, do you do?
But it comes in a boil. No. Here's the thing. It's a boil. So when I was back in the Army, we did it for a Super Bowl one time. Ordered some live crawfish from Louisiana, tons of spice. We used to get it when I go down to Florida when I was growing up. So it was like a special thing that we rarely would get to get. You throw corn, potatoes, sausage in there, boil it all together, and then just have it out, dump it on a table, and you just eat it, getting dirty. I like it. It's rarely get
I know people like it, yeah. I do love a good crab. My favorite, I'd say, I love a good chicken wing, a good buffalo wing. Nachos, you might need to pull me away from the table. If you got a good nacho, it's, you know how that goes. But they asked, why does the EU have the same defense manufacturing capabilities as the U.S., as in, can they actually arm themselves effectively?
Not today. Long term, they could.
Yeah.
It'll take a process to get there. I don't know if that process is 5, 10, 20, 30 years, but I wouldn't say they couldn't. There's nothing preventing Europe from getting there. They're just not there today. Thoughts, man?
I would argue I think they're in a better position than the United States in terms of arming themselves, because they have more manufacturing capability. They have many more factories than the United States, but also it takes the U.S. a while to produce missiles, and if Europe can produce missiles rapidly using their already existing industrial capacity, I think they'll be set. But as you said, right now, no. In the future, definitely.
All right, I'm going to take the next two here. I'll read them off to you. So why didn't we see NATO or the European Union threaten Russia over North Korean involvement? You've got the NATO hat on, Ben. Speak for NATO.
Well, so NATO doesn't do things, right? NATO is like the name for an alliance, but NATO doesn't issue threats like the leaders and the leaders of NATO do, like the members of the countries. So I don't think NATO or the EU would be... EU could, but I don't think NATO is ever in a position to issue a threat, nor would it ever. But I think the reason why you didn't see European nations issue threats over it, I think the Biden administration did a lot of chaining of European allies. They really talked Poland and Estonia, France, a lot of people off the ledge several times during the course of this war, and trying to hold them back using the U.S. security guarantee. So I think that's why you didn't see a direct threat, even though you probably should have, because you're bringing a very valid point. But I believe that's why you didn't see a threat from any European leaders. What do you think?
I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah, especially the part about the EU, especially NATO issuing threats. We wouldn't really see that. I did look up. We did get statements from NATO saying "Hey, this is bad. We wish Russia wouldn't do this. This is not a good thing. It's going to make the conflict worse." But across the board, unless it's directly attacking a NATO member, when it comes to that, they're very firm, and that will be met with an appropriate response. Outside of that, NATO doesn't tend to make that kind of threat. But last one here, Ben. Does the pain end?
What's the date?
21st, March 21st.
We'll see.
Very confident.
I mean, look, it's probably going to get worse. Probably going to get pretty dark. But so long as the American people are making smart choices, then we will see light eventually. Now, can people be counted on to do that? That'll be up for the audience to tell me. But what do you think? Do you think the pain ends, or do you think it gets worse before it gets better?
It does not end. Accept the new reality and just get used to the pain tolerance.
Yeah.
New normal.
Yep. That is true. Yeah, new normal. I don't know. I mean, At least he's kind of funny at times.
It's pretty funny, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, folks, that just wraps up our episode 18 of the Unclassified podcast. So if you like it, subscribe, comment, like it, share it. On Spotify, we'll put a poll up. Last week, we had a poll up that was, will Americans miss the U.S.-led world order? And over 90% of you, there were around 30 votes, and around 90% of you said yes, they will miss it. So all these poll, we need better questions, because all these poll questions are just, it's always like 90-10, right? Or like 70-30.
Right.
We
All
don't
right,
really
we'll
have
work on that
anything that's
today.
ever
We'll work on that
contested.
today.
Yeah. So anyways, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next week, or maybe in the middle week if something terrible happens. Who knows?
Always a possibility, yeah.
The pain never ends. All right, bye, guys.